Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United of the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this. But the whistle goes now. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United, the National League, are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday service, Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. We are live at the moment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. So if you want to join in the comments, please do. I will try and keep an eye on them if anyone chucks anything in. Joining me today is Gabriel Sutton, and we will be joined in a moment with Andy Kay, who seems to have just lost his connection. We're going to be talking a little. Yeah, that's perfect timing from Andy. Well done. We'll be talking all things Walsall, but we'll be like a band-aid and we'll rip that one off. But before we get onto that, Gabriel, you from the EFL debate is what your handle is on Twitter, and you do various different articles for different companies. You know a staggering amount about the EFL, which we were chatting. A couple of us were chatting about on Tuesday before the Wigan match. And it was like we kind of head over to your Twitter page just to have a little look to see what should we know. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and why do you know so much about Football League?
Do you know, I get this question quite a lot, Mike, and I think I'm just quite lucky in the sense that I'm able to spend the time researching it. So someone else on my street, a guy called Steve down the road, he's a plumber, and he asked me, "How do you know so much about these teams?" And my answer was, it's part of my job. So there's things that he will do as a plumber that I've got no idea about. So if he started talking to me about rolled steel joists, then I wouldn't have the slightest clue about what he's on about. So it's just being able to put the time into researching it really, and having relationships with different fan groups like yourselves, and I've been lucky enough to sort of be able to work towards building up a decent platform for it, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things that we kind of mentioned, and a lot of people don't have this, and it's a really, really, really excellent skill to have, it's twofold. When you don't know, you just go, right, can somebody tell me? Or can someone tell me anything about this? Which is actually really difficult. Most people just go, oh, I'm going to bluff this. Me, hello. And a lot of people, and when you get it wrong, you're just there straight away going, yeah, I got that one wrong. Why did I get that one wrong? Where would I go? And it's just really, really refreshing to see someone just own everything. Just say, yeah, there's gaps in my knowledge. Fill me in, guys. Tell me what's going on. And it's really, really good. So is that a skill you've learned, or you've always done that?
That's a really good question. I think I've always been quite curious to learn more things, and I always think that trying to sort of bring other people into the conversation is something that I'm quite passionate about, really, because I think it is a time in certain areas of football where fans don't necessarily feel heard, certainly at the top level. And what I love about what I'm able to do in the EFL is giving fans a voice and building those links. So it's always important to me to start with hearing what the fans think. And sometimes you get responses that may be a little bit reactionary sometimes, and therefore you've kind of got to balance that, balance your own perception of something with what fans are saying. And sometimes the truth is a little bit in the middle. But no, I think I'm always trying to learn new things. And if there's something that I hear that goes against what I already think, then that's a great opportunity to sort of broaden my whatever the word is. But yeah, it's but yeah, I love hearing what fans think.
Yeah, can't believe you're breaking the news to us that fans can be reactionary and there's areas of grey. No, surely the world is black and white. Everyone hates us or everyone loves us. But we will now. Andy's back. He tried to get out, but
it didn't quite work.
Yeah, we will talk about Walsall. Obviously, well, I have to say, I feel like I've got a massive reputation because it was quite funny because at Wigan, 4 or 5, maybe even 6, 7 people said variations of the same thing of, Mike, are you all right? It's outside the M25. What are you doing? So we obviously know I wasn't there. I did listen and watch some highlights, and I've got the match to watch back. But Andy, was it as bad as all that? I mean, so many changes, losing Dean in the warm-up.
I think it was always going to be a tough ask. I think anyone going there thinking it was going to be an easy victory for us is a fool. Particularly those people who went on Tuesday, because our players, worked their socks off, and those changes that we made were extremely important and vital changes for the simple reason that we've got a Tuesday, a Saturday, a Tuesday, a Saturday, a Tuesday, a Saturday. We've got a really, really tough run of fixtures. One of those games is at home. All the rest are away. This is really, really stretching our side to the limit. So coming away with anything from Walsall would have been a bonus. Matt said in his post-match interview that we were probably worth a draw. I think we were worth a draw. But it was never going to be a classic performance. It was never going to be your Carlisles or your Colchesters or anything like that. It was always going to be a hard-fought struggle. Losing Dean in the warm-up was disappointing, but weirdly enough, because Walsall was so poor, it didn't make much of a difference. I mean, he had to make, I think, 2 saves in the entire game. Mm-hmm. I think it was Walsall were a very, very poor side. I think one of the poorest I've seen this season. I thought Scunthorpe playing us at home had more about them than Walsall did at their own place. So I think it was always going to be, they weren't going to get very far. So I think losing Dean was not necessarily a problem. Losing Louis, I think Kobe had a really good game actually. Kobe Rowe was slotted straight back in. I think it's his first 90 minutes for however long, and he seems much more with it. That was fine. Ricky Corboa, I think, probably by his own admission, had a poor game. Unfortunately, some of the reactionary fans are basically saying, "Oh, he's not good enough, not good enough for this level." And actually, no, you don't judge a player on one performance. I think I said on the forum yesterday, I said if that was the case, then we wouldn't have Will Randall or Dean Pisanis, who have been 2 of our best players, but actually have had games where they've just been, they've been really, really off form, and fans have already been calling for their heads at that point. Dean is now, a complete fan favourite for understandable reasons, and I think Will Randall is getting close to being my player of the season because he's just on Tuesday night at Wigan when he was on the pitch, he, apart from scoring the goal, which was fantastic, he did not lose possession once during that game. Every time he had the ball, it went to another Sutton player. He didn't. He was not tackled for the entire game, and it's little things like that people miss. So, yeah. I think the fact that we had knackered players out there, getting Harry injured when we did, and really forcing Milson to play in midfield when he really shouldn't have played was another factor. Although Milson gave it his all, whether that means he'll be all right for Tuesday, I don't know. So you're gonna have these things. Donny going off as well, very early doors, meaning we played Bugil and Bennett up front, who are 2 players that are both very, very good, but kind of need the Wilson, the Tanto sort of players to play with them. Together, they don't necessarily play as well because they're very, very similar sort of players. So it was never. I don't think it was ever in any realistic situation going to be an easy win for us. I think the penalty was very, very soft. It happened right in front of me, and it was a shoulder barge. I mean, it wasn't necessarily anything particularly dodgy. Colin Wilkinson celebrated in the same way he did for Dagenham. I don't know what his problem is with Sutton. I have no idea, apart from the fact maybe he's from Croydon. But that's the only thing I can think of. But he was again, I think he was actually embarrassing his own team later on when he was just falling over all the time, hassling the referee. It was quite a horrible. It wasn't the fact that Walsall were necessarily a poor side. They were kind of really, really strange and physical with it. It was kind of like they were trying to make up for their inadequacies by trying to take gamesmanship. And I mean, there was one point where their manager got a yellow card in the second half because he manhandled Kizzy as he was taking a throw in. I mean, you don't do that as a manager. You just don't do that. So that was what we were up against. And as a result, we lost the game. But I see it as we lost 1 point. I didn't see it as we lost 3 because we would never get 3.
Yeah, I agree. I was listening, and although we had our usual could have nicked something at the end, it was one of those. If it wasn't a soft penalty, it would have been a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, absolutely.
And from listening to it and various comments, there was a lot of Walsall fans on Twitter who was kind of saying that was never a penalty. We'll take it, but that was never a pen. But there seemed to be a consensus that the ref, having given the penalty, decided then to give Walsall pretty much nothing anymore. And we got lots of little decisions, but when there was a chance of a penalty decision at the other end, he didn't want to know about it either. So it was a strange one. Obviously, can't blame the ref. I knew, and I said last week that it was just that pitch of Wigan just looked massive. There were times Joe, who's been brilliant, was suddenly the ball's flown over his head, and he's looked over behind him and suddenly went, "Where did he come from?" And there wasn't anyone there a minute ago. But yeah, you just kind of knew that there was not a hangover, not a celebration, but just what they left on the pitch was nothing on Tuesday. They just were knackered.
I mean, it didn't help as well. I mean, the pitch at Wigan itself, apart from being big, was actually quite boggy. It was a heavy surface to play on, which won't have helped our side at all. I mean, that's not really an excuse for result because, of course, whatever surface the team plays on, both teams are playing on it. So, absolutely. But I think it probably took more out of us than it could have done, which concerns me a little bit more for Tuesday.
And to be fair, the fact that whatever you say and whatever you try and do, there was a huge amount of emotion getting through into the semi-final to get to a final. I felt it, and I wasn't on the pitch, and so there's a huge amount of emotion. So the good news is it wasn't to one of our playoff rivals, which would have been a hell of a lot worse news. I mean, I'm going to a couple of not many comments this week, but Gabriel, who's been on with us before, he's kind of basically pointed out that the injuries are a bit more worrying than the actual result, which I would agree with. Matt said they're mostly niggles and precautions, which is obviously good news, but then we don't know what. How much Matt is playing things down, we don't know, obviously. But what we'll do very quickly, I do want to come back to you and talk to you a bit more about the Wigan match and the cup final and so on. But we'll bring in Rich from the Loathsome Stranger podcast. And I've said that wrong. I know I've said it wrong. But I'll get him to say it properly and give you the correct links. So
the Loathsome Stranger, I think it is.
Everyone gets it wrong. Do not worry.
I wrote it out. I deliberately I didn't copy and paste it. I typed it out so I would try and remember it. But tell us properly what it is. Be professional.
It's the Loathed Strangers podcast, but my Twitter handle is Loathed Stranger because they ran out of letters, and I didn't realize that would cause as much issue as it did retrospect, at the time. And I also didn't realize how much of a tongue twister it is, because when I created the name, or when I went with the name of the pod, I didn't say it aloud. And then once it was too far along after that, so we had to go with it.
Well, my one, being Mike, I decided to be very, very clever. And it's the SU, so Sutton United, Talk Time, TT on podcast. So SUTT on podcast, the Sutton podcast.
That's pretty cool.
It's ridiculous. You don't say it out loud. You just, the Sutton, fuck it, Sutton podcast. That's it. I'm the only one, that'll do. But you must be slightly different to our feelings from yesterday. Was it 92nd? No, 95th, 96?
90. Yeah, I think it was in the 96th, right at the start of that. So a couple of seconds after the 5 minutes of injury time, we're ended. So yeah, it was a really, I mean, if you know the background to the fixture, it was a really emotive moment for a lot of Swindon fans, and it wasn't about Oldham Athletic, for which we have absolutely no problems with at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was about the manager and the way that he sort of, I wouldn't say, I'm reluctant to say behaved, but the way he was during his Swindon tenure was not what anyone would want from their manager. He just never, he turned up, he didn't seem bothered. He everything he did, he just didn't seem bothered. He teased us with about 11 games to go, saying he was going to resign, and then they convinced him to stay. And there's this feeling that he was very much he was a part of what almost killed Swindon, because he was brought in by the regime that did the absolute utmost to destroy us. And Oldham are going through that sort of stuff at the moment now, and there's no way on earth I would ever sort of wish any ill on any club in that respect. But for Sheridan, that was closure for us yesterday. We're not going to obsess about if he turns up with another club in 3 years' time. I don't think he'll still get stick, but I don't think he'll get what he got yesterday, because that was a nice ending. And him flipping the bird at the Swindon fans as he left the dugout at the end of the game, that was a nice the end moment, I think.
Yeah, I saw that, and I did kind of. I find it difficult. I mean, we were talking about football fans being a bit reactionary, but there's a huge amount of hypocrites in football as well, where people will give dogs abuse, and as soon as someone does that, they're like, "Well, you can't do that," and it's like, "What? There's a balance here."
I think Swindon fans wanted that. I think they wanted that reaction, and it was quite apparent as early in the first half that Sheridan was more than happy to shout back and give it the big ones. And what was even better is Oldham fans, that they love Sheridan so much, so they joined in the pantomime by getting so behind Sheridan. And it was, you know, to be honest, it's like, it's the stuff that you're not allowed to say you actually really enjoy watching. and then like, it's better than the game itself, you know. So everyone who says, oh, it's an outrage, you should get like a 12-match touchline ban or whatever, I'm not behind that at all. He'll get a slap on the wrists, but he had it all game long. He knew it. Part of the problem is that we spent all but 2 games of his tenure were in lockdown. There was 2,000 in 2 games attending, so we didn't have that moment to sort of go, "Girl, you're rubbish." So him coming back was a bit of a surprise, because we didn't think he would be back in football. I don't think he thought he'd be back in football after Swindon. But Oldham always comes a calling.
You'll always have Oxford between you.
Exactly.
On the season so far, how's it kind of going to your expectations? Are you kind of where you want to be, or?
Yeah, we absolutely are. So in terms of the season expectation-wise, and obviously Gab will know all about this, Swindon were expected to go down this year based on what we encountered last summer, where, you know, with a matter of weeks before the season, we had 6 experienced players on the books and a couple of first-year pros. We had no one else. And when that happens, traditionally, it's a season of struggle. And I think Ben Garner, Swindon's manager, mentioned it in his post-match yesterday. Swindon and Oldham are 2 teams in embargoes at the moment. And the difference between where Swindon are and where Oldham are is a real sign of how well Swindon did this year recruitment-wise. But what we really wanted, and we knew it wasn't going to happen, we wanted everyone to just go, you know, this season, what will be. As long as we don't go down, all will be good. But we've showed promotion promise, and every time we lose now, there's all that flapping. So, you know, when we lose, the fans go, this is out. You know, there's a small pocket of fans that don't really rate Ben Garner, I don't think, but they've done a tremendous job, and we're in the playoff picture. We're in the automatic. You know, it's so close up there with you guys and a couple of others. It really does depend on, you know, how the running goes, but Swindon can easily make automatic, and we can easily finish 12th. And I think there's about 7 teams that can say that right now. It's been a good season. There've been frustrating moments, as there always are, but I honestly, nobody expected us to really compete. When we started bringing in people like Louis Reed and Johnny Williams, you kind of sort of went, well, we're clearly not going to go down with these guys now. But you still don't know. You still don't know how it's going to pan out, and it's gone really well. And hopefully, yesterday's sort of last gasp, emotive winner will act as a catalyst. But we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I'm not sure if Andy would agree with me, but hopefully he will. You guys at our place for that first 20, 25 minutes was the first time this season that we were like, oh, maybe we really have stepped up a little bit, because all the other games we were in it, like even against Forest Green, we were in it. But yeah, it was you guys just absolutely tearing us apart for that first 20 minutes was like the first eek moment. Obviously, we've gone on since then. But how do you see the game going, Andy?
Tough one. I mean, the thing I'm hanging on to is that Swindon's away form is much better than their home form. I don't know how much that is relevant in the last few weeks as such, but I know that, away from home, they were pretty much unstoppable. But at home, they always seem to be kind of almost nervy at times. I think we're going to struggle to get much out of Tuesday. Again, if we come away with a point, it'd be great. But I just want to echo what you said earlier in the season. I mean, I would say a bit more than that first 20 minutes. That first half, Swindon blew us away. Johnny Williams shouldn't have been on that pitch. Johnny Williams is a Championship Premier League player. He's far too good for this level, and he bossed that entire game. And I just thought, you never like it when your team loses, but that game walked away and went, yeah, fair cop, totally. That was possibly a slightly unfair result, I think, on Swindon. I think they could have actually come away with 3 or 4. They were that far superior to us. The last half an hour we got back into it, but yeah, I mean, you guys were great, absolutely great, and it would be nice to be in a position where we don't lose to Swindon, because every time we've played you, we've lost. Going back to the early 80s, but yeah, it's just a case of whatever team we manage to put together on the day, and if we can come away with something, and I think if we can come away with a draw, that will actually be a really good result for us.
And Rich, how do you see the game going?
It really does depend. I mean, we've played in recent weeks. We played Exeter at home, and we took the lead, and then we just fell apart after we took the lead. We did similar against Salford, but we've but we're getting better at home in 2022. We have improved, and we could never have sustained that away form. So we've lost a couple away this year, but Swindon will just do their thing. We've got a few people out too. We're not threadbare, but if we get a couple more injuries, I think Harry McCurdy's back, or should be back for Tuesday after suspension. Harry is a very unique individual, but at the moment he's having the season of his career. That no one expected. I mean, in September, October time, he wasn't in the lineup, and then suddenly, even the game he scored 4 goals in, he wasn't great. It was just one of these things where everything went right for him. I'll get pelters for saying that, but everything sort of just worked out for him. But Swindon need to just build on these wins. It's becoming quite a trend in my mind, and I haven't got this science or the working for this. But when we have one of these sort of uplifting year wins, the Tuesday after, we kind of it falls flat, and we weren't great. We weren't great on Saturday, and that wasn't helped by Oldham just stinking the place out, trying to sort of break the play with, cynical fouls, tactical yellows all the way through the game, which is what we expected. But when Swindon did have the ball, we did struggle to sort of do what we can do very well, and some of the touches were a bit poor, but because of the last minute winner, everyone's like, oh my God, what a game. And I'm like, well, it was okay. We were all right. So we need to make sure that whatever they did this morning and tomorrow in training, they just work on the fundamentals that they weren't doing right against Oldham, because teams like Sutton, who are up there, are going to punish that. And there were a few moments where Oldham could have easily countered, but their forward line was just not at the races. And You know, I mean, not for the want of Hallam Hope trying to Maradona his way into infamy, but was it Bambula? He just, my goodness, what a performance that was by the poor guy. I felt for him, but everything he did was, and he had space options, just pass it, and he was just looking for 30-yarder. Oh dear, but there's stuff to work on for Swindon. I want to say that Swindon that they won't be going for draws now. We've got nothing else but the league. It's got to be wins. So for us to want to get that third place, I don't want to go in the playoffs. You know, we've got to attack it. And when we're cooking, we'll score 2-3 goals, no problem at all. And Jack Payne's just coming back from injury. He played well, but he was quite rusty, a few sloppy touches. And if he's back, he was good against Sutton in my mind, but he's good most weeks, to be fair. And as long as that's all going, I expect goals. But we concede, so we'll see. We just need to build on that last minute winner. We just got to do that and hope that you guys are thinking of Wembley and reserving yourself for that, which I will be broadly supportive of.
So you score and concede a lot of goals. So I'm hearing 0-0 on this. Is what I'm hearing. For not very often I get this, but a neutral viewpoint, Gab. What do you see?
Well, I think Swindon are making some real progress this year. I don't necessarily know if I see them getting promoted after the injuries to Tomlinson and to Cooper. It feels like that's taken away. They scored, was it 11 goals in 3 games or something along those lines, Rich, which is just incredible. And then just after that, or not long after that, I think there was the defeat to Salford, and then you get all these injuries, Louis Barry as well. And I don't know what Rich thinks, but I really like actually Josh Davison, but I feel like you need someone who can run beyond him. And I guess that if you don't really have that, if you've not got Louis Barry in the side, so I think absentees could affect them. I'll probably go for a draw for this one.
Okay, perfect.
Coward.
I'm not a coward. I'm saying it's going to be a draw.
Cowardly.
So that's perfect. You guys are welcome to, if you want to dip out or hang on. We're going to just talk about cup final stuff because we get to do that. So it's completely up to you if you want to dip out or stay in. I honestly don't mind either way. But thank you very much for all your input on that, Andy. Well, first of all, last week I had Mark on, and I didn't actually realise that Mark had done the drive from Wigan all the way down past London down to Cornwall. I know he said it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I realised it. So it's huge thanks to Mark, because he didn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think he only stepped in. He sort of said, "Oh yeah, if you ever need me." I went, "Oh, I've actually got a spot open." And after the match, he kind of looked a bit shocked, and I was like, "Yeah, you put yourself in there, mate." But there's a couple of little things. The tickets, we've obviously lots and lots of, not panic, but questions about tickets. Mm-hmm. And what, obviously we're not going to run out. We're taking nearly 15,000 as an initial allocation, and they've made the point it's initial. There's 2 things I want to say on this. The way they're seeming to be selling, not the club, obviously, because we're not doing it, but the way they seem to be selling it is if you buy your ticket the day they're released, and I buy it 3 or 4 days later, we could be completely working round. And as I kind of said, it's like, that might dilute it a little bit, because as much as, yes, I'd love to spend this moment with some of my friends and family who would be very, very pleased for me that Sutton win, obviously, because that's what's going to happen. But there will be just that little moment of, at that final, when Dean saved that penalty, it was just looking around, there was just bear hugs going on everywhere. I don't know, am I mental, or are you kind of along the same?
I know what you mean. I think what it is that you wanna be sitting and having the experience with the people that you had the experience with going up there with. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now we know that there are going to be a lot of people at Wembley who may have been to one game, may not have been to any game, may not be a Sutton supporter, but for the day will be a Sutton supporter. So you will be surrounded by Sutton supporters. Some will be very, very fair weather. Some will be, dyed in the wall, 60 years plus. I think what it is, it's the way I'm seeing it with my group of friends is actually we're pretty much buying them all together, and it may well be that one person will buy a whole load of tickets and then they'll get money in, and then you are with the people you want to be with. But I think also as well, it's the kind of, well, actually everyone around you is going to be supporting Sutton. And if you are a long-term supporter, it almost feels like a bit of a duty to actually almost take these fans under your wing and just basically say, right, this player's really good, this player's great, come on, cheer for this one, be great, and almost show the way. It's not an easy thing to do, but I know it is. I think part of the problem is this is a completely new experience for us. Even those who have been to Wembley before, the way this is done is completely new. We've never experienced anything like this. Going to a game where literally you have to go in a certain block in a certain area. You can't even go in the row in front, sort of thing. And I think it's that unknown that's gonna kind of like confuse a lot of people, maybe even myself. But it is what it is, and you'll have to adapt to the circumstances. But I would say to any Sutton fan, if you want to be around people that you want to be with, just communicate with each other and buy tickets together, because then you're going to be with the people you most want to be with for the match.
There's a little bit of hope that the club are going to go, actually, no, we're buying this many tickets and then buy them through us, so you're in this block. To be honest,
I don't think that's the right thing. And I'm basing that on how the club coped with tickets for Leeds and tickets for Arsenal. Now, you remember queuing up for 4 or 5 hours to get those tickets. Okay, it probably won't be that bad, but I think it would put an unfair burden on the club and the volunteers if that was the case. If there is a window for season ticket holders to buy before others, so actually the season ticket holders are all together, or together as much as they can be, that might help things. But then there might be some season ticket holders saying, well, I don't want to sit in this block in the middle. I want to sit behind the goal. It's all going to be about personal choice as well. So again, it's kind of like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care where I sit. I'm just over the moon to be at Wembley. I want to be as close to the pitch as possible. I know I've waited 35 years for this. There've been 3 very near misses in my time watching Sutton. I've waited too long for this to let any sort of logistical thing potentially spoil my experience. I'm going to be there as close to the front as possible. I'm going to shout my head off. I'm going to be there as soon as the gates open. I want to milk every minute of this experience as if it had udders.
Well, I've also said that I've got all that kind of, I'd rather do this. And then I'm also torn more. Actually, I'm just going to buy the most expensive ticket possible because I want to be able to say I've spent that much money watching Sutton United in a football match.
Well, but also as well, it might be the only time we do. I mean, okay, there's a possibility we could go to Wembley twice this season, but you don't know. You can work on possibilities or you can work on definites, and the definite is that we are going to be at Wembley on Sunday, April the 3rd, playing a League Cup final.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say is I've entered a couple of different competitions for a full-on VIP experience at Wembley, in which case it would absolutely be sea of bitches.
I want to see with you, but I'm not going to,
I said I wanted to be with you, but now I'm upstairs. Cheers. But yeah, a couple other little things on the final. The club shop, Gareth asked me to mention, although this is going out live and the deadline is already really, really tight. It's 11:59 tonight. You need to get your shirt orders in if you want it guaranteed before Wembley. They might still arrive, but it's 11:59 tonight to get absolutely guaranteed. So head to the club shop and you can get a replica shirt with the final details on, polo shirts with final details on, and you can even get customized stuff with numbers on the back. Although they're not offering 2022 with the numbers on the back, which I absolutely would have snapped their hands off.
I tell you something, with the number of away games this season, this month, and how much fuel costs are going up. I mean, the credit card's taking a battering. So absolutely. I'm just thinking, it can take a bit more of a battering with the top.
It's just like, do I not? But it's got to be done, I think. Also, didn't mention or didn't ask you for the players for the pod, the player of the day. Now you've mentioned Kobe. For the Walsall match, very, very difficult, obviously. But who else would you want to mention? I was thinking Stuart to just stepping in at 45 minutes notice.
Yeah, stepping in and doing absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, okay, he's a 40-year-old goalkeeper. His experience, he's hardly going to be spooked by this. I mean, yeah, no offense to Brad, but if Brad had gone in, making his league debut with such short notice, it could have well been he could have been a bit spooked by it. But I mean, Stuart, yes, he was not spooked by it, but then he didn't really have much to do either.
Yeah.
So
that does show something though, where because I've seen other games, not necessarily our games, but other games where the defence don't have any faith in the keeper.
Yeah.
And it just causes a little bit of panic back there. And the fact that didn't seem to happen just shows how much they trust him as well. So that's really positive news for someone who's only been with us 2.5 months.
Yeah.
Or even 2.5 months. So I like to have 4. So if you've got a couple,
I'll give you another one. Ben White.
Yeah. Okay.
Ben had a very solid game. Again, didn't do a huge amount wrong. Pushed up quite a lot. He was very, very attacking yesterday. When the side itself probably wasn't. But I think he had a solid game. Yeah. I'm trying to think who else stood out. I mean, there wasn't. Again, tiredness kicked in with so many of them. I mean, Omar was trying his best, but was knackered. Milson was trying his best, but he was knackered. I mean, there's always the default of falling back onto Goodliff because, again, week in, week out, he always does it. But it always feels like a bit of a cop-out because he is Mr. Consistency for us. He won't have a bad game. So I'm trying to think of ones that kind of stood out a bit more, and I think I might end up having to go with Ben Goodliff as the 4th one.
No worries. We will put those 4 forward and leave it to the vote. Although this one will be a bit more difficult because last couple have been quite obvious with Will with Enzio and Dino. But so this one, it could be spread around a little bit more. That'd be interesting. Yeah, marvellous. So thank you very, very much.
Always a pleasure.
Always good having you on. Anyone, just give us your feedback at Sutton Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the other thing, forget it again, TikTok, or drop an email, Mike at Sutton Podcast. And do vote on the Player of the Day nominations. Give us a shout out if you hear it. If you want to review, please do so on any of the podcast sites. I know there's loads of platforms, but keep trying to make me spend money to push it, but I'm not doing that. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to my guests. Thanks to Andy, as I said, to Rich, and to Gab Sutton, who stepped in for me at the last minute. It's a bit like Stuart Nelson. I should have thought to say that.
Well, you just said it.
Oh, my God. Should have thought to say that at the time, but never mind. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and we will catch you next time. We'll be on Wednesday. God, I've lost all my days. We'll be on Wednesday, and I'm being joined by Jared and Jenny and someone from Tranmere. It's Harry from Tranmere who's agreed to come on to us. So we will see you all on Wednesday. Thanks again. Bye-bye. United!